kind of old-fashioned cop who preferred working the streets and making arrests to taking tests toward promotion. He was the closest thing New York had to a Dirty Harry.
This is One Tough Podcast on the OG Podcast Network. Here's your host, Bo Dietl.
Everybody, welcome to One Tough Podcast. I'm joined here, like always, with the guy I'm going to fire in about 5 minutes, Carlo. Carlo.
Good morning.
No, good morning. Where's your guest? Our guest is delayed. Our guest is a good guy. Is Ira Rosen. He's a journalist, producer, 60 Minutes. And you want to know something? He's friggin' late. And you want to know something? Imagine if 60 Minutes was late at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. That don't fly. And I'm gonna take him down when he gets here. I don't give a frig who you are. You don't do that. That's disrespectful. I'm like Robert De Niro. I mean, would you have Robert De Niro wait a half an hour?
No.
Well, that's it. That's the answer. So, Carlo, what'd you learn from this?
You always get your ducks in a row and never rely on traffic because traffic's always
you've
bad.
got to what you got to do is you got to call earlier. You make them to get here earlier. Always lie about the appointment. If it's 10:30, what do you say?
It's 10.
Okay. All right.
But at the top of the show, let's talk to all the fans. Thank everybody for writing in. We appreciate all your emails. You always follow us on social media. You could follow us at One Tough Podcast on Twitter. That'll give you the latest updates on everything that we're doing, all our new episodes, upcoming guests, and stuff like that. Bo is at Bo Dietl on Twitter and at The Real Bo Dietl on Instagram. You could find our clips there. You could find all the stuff that's related to the show. You can write to us. We'll answer you. We appreciate all your suggestions, all your comments and stuff like that. And we're listening to a lot of your suggestions. We're trying to get a lot of these ideas for guests. We're reaching out to a lot of people.
Some guests. Okay, Carlo?
Yes.
Okay. Reality. Did you see what was in the Daily News? Online, the mayor went over for Sesame Street. They were naming the street Sesame Street. Who shows up is Big Bird. And they quote me naming him Big Bird when I ran for mayor against him. Then all of a sudden he says, I've been hearing a lot about Big Bird. Yeah, from me, dickhead mayor. I called you Big Bird. And Big Bird didn't want to be near you because you're a thief and your wife is a thief and you're stealing money. You're stealing money through these so-called consultants. I want to know where the money's going, okay? So they had a big thing, and it's in the paper today, Big Bird. So what do you think, Carlo?
I think that Big Bird and Big Bird finally met. I think it was it was destined to be. It was a very funny picture. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm going to be heading out to the Salt Hedge Fund Conference. They got me the keynote speaker. You know, I was reading today, Carlo. A lot of people don't really realize about cybersecurity. Corporations now are spending up near $3,000 a year for cybersecurity per employee. Do you realize what kind of numbers that is?
That's a lot of money.
So if you got 100,000,
Morgan Chase is one of the biggest
if you got 100,000 employees, come on, 100,000 employees, $3,000 an employee per year. How much is that? Come on,
a lot of money on cybersecurity.
No, I want you to give me the number. 3,000 times 100,000. So I can do it at the top of my head. It's $30 million.
It's a lot.
A lot of potatoes. Was that the right number?
Let me check.
Oh, okay. I just did that off the top of my head. And I only graduated with a general diploma, Carlo. I didn't have a college degree like you. You can't figure it out in your head?
$300 million.
$300 million?
Yep.
Like I said, they're spending a lot of friggin' money.
Yes, sir.
$300 million.
Right, our guest is here. Let me just grab him.
Oh, you better get him because I'm where is he? Get in here. He wouldn't be late for 60 minutes. Ira! I can't believe people are so late. Would he be late for 60 minutes like this? No. This is Bo Dietl's podcast. This is like being slapped in the face. But when he gets here, I'll take him down for this. I'll take him down, and we'll talk to him because he's really a pretty good journalist. But I don't want to allude to that right away. He opened up with some very, very important things, some feature stories on 60 Minutes over the years, and he's really a remarkable journalist. So, but he's late. So now he's a remarkable late journalist. So I don't know where Carlo's going. But we enjoyed doing a podcast, and we like some of the listeners to text in here and let us know who you'd like us to have on the show. We're open for anybody. I mean, we've had drug dealers, we've had murderers, we've had everybody on. We had liars, cheats, scandalous people. I think it's pretty unique to have people on here. Hey, you know what another guest would be? I wonder if you'd come on. Jordan Belfort. Remember him, the Wolf of Wall Street? This creep robbed $200 million. I'd like to get him on the podcast and find out where he buried that money, because he certainly didn't spend $200 million, and he probably has a lot of potatoes sitting around, you know? Hey, Ira, what the hell? Would you be late for 60 Minutes? If 60 Minutes didn't go on at 7 o'clock in the morning, would you be late?
No, how you been? Nice to see you. You look
No. You're very late, and I have a very important appointment. I was ready to shut it down. I'm very upset.
I'm sorry about that.
My friend Ira Rosen is a great a journalist from 60 Minutes. He's one of my heroes. 20 national Emmys, 4 DuPont Awards, 2 RFK Awards, and he won a Peabody. And you are my friend, even though you're my late friend now. I'm going to cut right to it, okay?
Yes, sir.
I want to know what's going on with the Tiffany Network with my man Les Moonves. Hold on. My man Jeff Vega. Hold on, my man Charlie Rose. Was that a friggin' orgy over there? What's going on? They should have my cybersecurity there, my website.
I have no idea what's going on.
That's right. I didn't think you want to answer.
Yeah.
Who's zooming who?
I have no idea what's
Are
going on.
you hitting Gail? Gail King?
Gail is an amazing journalist.
I'm going to tell you, so she handled that. I'm going to tell you, she handled that psychopath piece of shit. What's his name? R. Kelly.
Yeah.
She handled that excellent. I watch it in the morning. I really do. I watch CBS News in the morning. I like Gail King. I think she's cool. She's a very good journalist, and she's able to get to the heart of a person.
You know, she didn't know me from a hole in the wall. I was walking around, and she says, you know, you look really lost. Let me take you to where you're going.
She's truly a good person.
She just took me to whatever the place was, sat me down, and she didn't know who I was.
What, when you first met her?
When I first met her, yeah.
Yeah. But do me a favor. Just
Yes,
tell you,
sir.
got a big fan in Bo. I love Gail King. I listen to her. I listen to CBS every morning.
Yeah.
You know, I hate division. She seems like a person, along with Oprah. You know, we want to bring everybody together instead of the divisions and all that. I like Gail King. What about you there, Russ?
Yeah, I think it's
You don't even know who
important
it
to
is,
have
right?
Yeah, it's
You
CBS
have no clue.
this morning. I watched it.
CBS this morning?
CBS.
What? Who else is on the show?
I don't know.
Oh,
To
so
be
you
honest,
don't
I
watch
don't
it. They got rid of my other friend, Charlie Rose. He got caught with his zipper down there. They got the other guy. He's pretty good. And then that other girl, she thought she was going to take up with CBS News. What's her name?
Who's this?
The one that's on the morning.
Nora O'Donnell.
Yeah, she's okay, but she's a little into herself too much. I like Gail. She's not that into herself. You know, she's good. But let's talk about you. All right. Ira.
Yes, sir.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Queens.
Where?
Fresh Meadows.
Oh, the rich part.
185th, 73rd Avenue, next to the best pizza parlor in New York. I don't care what anybody says. Brothers Pizzeria. A block down.
Better than Prince Street Pizza?
Yeah, no comparison. The guy's been there
I don't know what
for
anyway.
over 30 years.
Yeah.
Best bagels in New York on 184th Street.
Oh, that place I used to get the bagels on the service road.
Yeah, exactly. You know that place.
Yeah, I know. I used to pick them up there. Pretty good bagels.
They're pretty good bagels.
Yeah. And
Francis Lewis High School.
Francis Lewis.
I was on the track team and tennis team. Mm-hmm. And, back then, everybody had wood rackets. You didn't have to hit it very hard. So I used to play.
Andre Agassi's. I don't want to mean to bull. I don't mean to brag, but he's one of my dear friends, Andre Agassi.
Agassi, yeah.
And I introduced him to Brooke Shields, and he was at my house when he first ran into Steffi Graf. And we were out there with Joey Pots and Pans, me, and he had his trainer there. And we were cooking filet mignons. We're drinking Lafitte Rothschild wine. We're drinking tequilas, margaritas. And we're walking along the beach. I had a house on the beach in Quogue. And all the people there. This is right leading up to the U.S. Open. And people seeing Andre Agassi walk along with no shirt on. We had no shirts on. And we walking along the beach. People were flipping out. All of a sudden, he jumps into the pool, Ira. And with a bathing suit, but he had the phone number from Steffi Graf, had given her phone number. It's in his book, this whole thing, what I'm saying. And I never knew that he had problems with crystal meth.
So I got to tell you the story, talking about being late. So I did a story on John Gotti Jr.
Yes.
The kid, right? And it took me 4 years to do this story. And Steve Croft was showing up late.
Oh,
and
like you?
Junior, no, I was 2 minutes late.
Oh.
Steve was like 30, 40 minutes late. He overslept. It took me 4 years to get this on the can. So I'm doing entertainment for Junior, and I'm trying to like make him happy and all this stuff. And he says, so I tell him about Andre Agassi, and I said, he just got $7 million for this book. And he said, what kind of book could they give him $7 million for? Well, he said he hated tennis. And he said, I hated the mob. That has to be worth at least $2 million. And I said, yeah, but the guy talked about doing drugs and all this stuff.
I was surprised about that.
And he said, I did drive-by shootings. That has to be worth at least $3 million.
I hope he didn't admit to any homicides.
No.
There's no statute of limitations.
Well, he missed.
Yeah,
he missed.
But the thing is, because we're going to probably get him on our show, but I don't want him to admit to any homicide.
No.
I'm going to do a disclaimer right from the beginning. I love you, John Jr., his father. Well, I grew up with his dad.
Sure.
His dad was my friend, and I say it right out. He could kiss my ass because I don't care. John Gotti Sr. was my friend. I grew up with him as a kid, and I talked about a story when I got assaulted, and then we went to meet the guys, and John Gotti, it's a long story, but I like John Gotti Sr. They went after him like they're going after the president. They're not going to stop until they get him. When people are after you, they're after you for whatever it is. They might start this, but then they're going to open up Pandora's box someplace else.
Junior was the single best criminal storyteller I ever have interviewed in my life.
Yeah,
after that story,
did you ever watch the specials?
Yeah, I saw that
60
interview.
Minutes?
Yeah, in his.
after that story aired, two police commissioners came up and said, hey, we really like this guy. I said, like him? You've been trying to put him in jail for the last 10 years. Yeah, but he's a good storyteller.
Yeah, he's a good guy. As a matter of fact, his son is boxing.
His son
MMA,
is,
yeah.
When is he
MMA.
I
boxing?
think his next fight's May 31st.
Right.
All right, they were asking me
Up
if
in,
I want to go.
Connecticut.
I want to go, but that other kid with the big nose, what's his name?
I don't know who's fighting.
No, the kid that wants me to go, Will DeMayo,
yeah.
with the big beak. Yeah,
Right.
I want to go to fight. Was it Hartford or
Hartford,
something?
Connecticut,
That's
yeah.
far. Please.
Yep.
Maybe I'll borrow your helicopter. Right.
So,
there.
Ira, I mean, you grew up in Queens. Did you always were attracted to journalism and the news, or what kind of led you into that? And how did you?
I like
get your start?
asking strangers the nosiest questions, and being a journalist gives you a license to do that. And so I started doing it in high school. I sort of did it in college. I exposed the Cornell basketball coach for recruiting violations.
Wow, back then.
Back then. And then before I knew it, I was working with a guy named Jack Anderson, who was a big-time columnist.
Yeah,
and,
Jack Anderson. You know who that was, son?
I don't.
You're too young. Jack Anderson was one of the most famous.
Oh, yeah. Jack was amazing. And he worked with this guy, Les Whitten, and it was at the time of Watergate, and everybody was paranoid about the CIA. We had a guy who walks into our office, and he says, the CIA put bugs in my body. And we're trying to get rid of this crazy person. And Les Whitten, who is Jack Anderson's sidekick, you probably know Les Whitten. So Whitten comes out and he says, listen, we have this problem all the time, and I know how to short circuit the system. So he takes a clothes hanger, bends it out of shape, puts it in the back of the guy's pants, so it's dragging against the floor. And he says, this short circuit hits the CIA. It'll fuck him up really bad. And the guy walks out the door with this clothes hanger, like dragging from behind him. I always wonder what happened to that guy. He may
Did it do the trick? Cured him?
It cured him, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? Like these stories. Did you ever interview someone who got like really violent?
Violent.
Or just uncomfortable, awkward?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of these guys in jail, in prison. When I was doing Nicky Barnes.
Okay, sure.
I don't know if you remember Nick. You'd remember
Do
Nicky.
I remember the Hayes brothers?
I'm asking the kid here if he
The
remembers
Hayes
Nicky.
brothers were his bodyguards, which I
Right.
punched out in a cell. It's a long story. Go ahead.
So Nicky was in the witness protection program. He ratted out everybody, and we were trying to I was working with Mike Wallace at the time. We were trying to get him on camera, and so Nicky didn't want to go on camera. So I was with Rudy Giuliani, and he had a guy named Bill Tendy. Bill Tendy was his number 2 guy, very tough guy. And Tendy said, let me talk to him. Let me see if I could talk him into doing it. So Rudy and I are kibitzing a little bit. Tendy, after 2 minutes, comes in and says, all right, he's agreed to doing it. So Rudy says to him, what did you do? He said, I threw him up against the wall. And I said, listen, motherfucker, the only choice you have is what color shirt you're going to wear. So sit down and talk to this guy.
Nice.
It's my kind of booker.
Yeah,
that
nice.
works.
But it's just funny. People don't realize, and not because you're here. I'm not sucking up to you. I watch 60 Minutes religiously, and I always say if it's on 60 Minutes, it's true. And what kind of research for the young man over here, Carlo, who was born yesterday, what kind of research goes in before you get a feature on 60 Minutes? How much time is put into these things? Sometimes it could be years, right?
Yeah, it could be years. We've done these opiate stories, and the thing is, you have to check out the people. It's like, it's not so much what you're trying to find out, is what you want to find out to make sure you're not being set up or conned.
Well, the big famous one was what? The famous one was with Bush, right?
Oh yeah, no, that was.
You don't remember that either, Carl.
Dan Rather, the fake military records.
The fake military records, which caused a lot of people to lose their jobs at 60 Minutes too, which had just begun, and Rather ended up losing his job. A lot of people lost it. A lot of really good people lost it.
Well, that just shows you if you do something like, I mean, when you look upon 60 Minutes, there's 60 Minutes and there's all the copycats, 48 minutes, 48 hours, all this bull crap, 30, 50, all this crap. There is 60 Minutes, Carlo, and then there's everything else. And I mean, I'm a religious guy every Sunday, and if I'm driving from the Hamptons, I put on 88, CBS 88, and I listen to the simulcast of 60 Minutes. I mean it. I'm not saying this because he's here. I love 60 Minutes, the way the production is and the facts behind it. That's why when they came up with this bad thing with Dan Rather, it was like, oh my God, it was like the Pope, getting his robe taken off.
Right. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful brand, and it's been around for
50 years. How many years?
50 years.
50 years.
I've done over 100 stories.
So when you have stewardship over this type of appointment television, how does that? And do you consider that when you're bringing a story in front of the newsroom, or do you think about how you have this long-term brand and this today's media landscape where things are not often
true? No, I don't
people
think about any of that stuff. What I think about is what I watch the piece.
Okay.
I'm a little ADD, so kind of like Bo, except not as bad. So if it doesn't get my attention, I just don't do it. So if I wouldn't watch the story, I won't do it. So that's my criteria.
Well, I mean, he's at a point where you do 100 shows, his credibility right up to the top is something that, well, if Ira doesn't want to do it, then the story must be crap. But in reality, the only good side about it is like doing a movie against doing Broadway. On Broadway, you ain't got a retake. You're live. Right. Or on the news reporting, you're live. Whereas 60 Minutes, if you make a mistake and the story starts to get a little tainted with unfactual information, you're able to walk around it or shit can it. Am I correct?
Right, you're exactly right. And you guys did a lot of prep here, and again, I'm sorry I was late, but one of the questions you have here that you put in front, I love how you give me the questions ahead of time. You sort of lay this out.
Is that bad?
No, it's good. It's good. It's good that I could say, I would never ask a question like this. I would never ask.
Well, Carlo's about to get fired right now after the show because he didn't check on your ass getting here on time.
Yeah, well, I had a big garbage truck in front of me. It must have been
for friggin' 45 minutes.
Yeah,
it was a big garbage truck.
Oh, stop! It wasn't.
You're starting to sound like De Blasio right now when he's supposed to be somewhere at the same time. I had to go to Brooklyn to walk on the treadmill, and then I had to take the shower. And I'm sorry, I'm 2 years late. Come on.
You sounded like Imus. You better be careful.
No, he's retired. But go ahead.
So you have a question here, which is, what was one of the favorite stories I ever worked on? So, I did a story many years ago with Joe Bonanno, the head of organized crime.
You did the one in Arizona?
Yeah. You remember that one?
I just told you, I'm a religious 60 minutes. He actually went and interviewed him in Arizona. Now, you got to remember who Joe Bonanno was.
Right.
He was one of the heads of the 5 crime families. And then he fucking flipitated.
Yeah, he did. He did kind of.
And then Massara, his underboss, flipitated.
Everybody.
I mean, everybody with the Bonanno family was like...
Yeah, they were something. So Joe, we had just finished the interview. Joe and I having a cognac in the back in Tucson, and so I said, Joe, it's just the two of us. Let's just have a conversation. And he says,
never trust a prostitute, a journalist, or a drug dealer. Okay, Carlo? That's what I learned when I became a detective. Don't trust him, don't trust a prostitute, and don't trust a drug dealer.
So now 2019, it's all right. It's a good setup for what I'm about to say. So in 2019, now I could tell the story. Joe's dead, and Bill Bonanno, his kid, is dead. He was the capo. So I say to Joe, Joe, what was it about Meyer Lansky? As a Jewish kid growing up in New York, Lansky and Sandy Koufax were the two guys I looked up to. And so he says, Lansky, he was nothing to us. He had the picture. I said, what are you talking about, the picture? He had the picture of J. Edgar Hoover and Clyde Tolson, who was his number 2, having sex.
Really?
And I said,
that's
what?
Crazy.
And so he said, yeah, we had the picture. And that way they kept off us. And if you remember, and Bo remembers this, for a long time the FBI said there was
would not bother the mob.
Never, no such thing as organized crime.
Until they tried to whack Kennedy, and then RFK came strong.
Came strong, exactly right. And so because of the picture, he said
he actually said there was a picture.
He said he had the picture, but he's looking at me like,
who? Was J. Edgar
Hoover and Clyde Tolson.
No, but who was pounding who?
I don't know. I didn't get the details.
Come on. I would ask Bonanno. No, come on.
I asked for the picture, and he said, no, I don't have it. Lansky had it. They put it in a safe deposit. I wanted to get the picture.
We should have made copies.
Should have at least, but that was the leverage Lansky had over those guys.
I'd like to get one of Comey getting hit in the shitter.
So then I asked him about Kennedy. I said, how did you guys kill Kennedy? And he said, well, I got, when the assassination went down, I called up Miami. He called us Santos Trafficante, and he said, Santos, what's going on?
Weren't they pounding the girlfriend? Wasn't Kennedy hitting the girlfriend?
That was later. That was no. That was earlier, but that had nothing to do with the assassination. So Santos said, listen, Miami and New Orleans will take the heat for it. New York's absolved. They don't have to worry about it. So Bonanno said he sent an emissary down to talk to Trafficante, and Trafficante said, listen, we tried to knock off Kennedy in Miami. That didn't work with a Cuban exile, so we took care of him in Texas. And it turned out that what they did was they got, according to what Bonanno told me, they got a Corsican hit team who came in and participated in it. Now, who knows if it's caca, if it's not caca, but, these are the stories.
But the only problem
I've heard the Corsican connection.
Yeah, but the only problem I have with these stories, they become their own life.
That's
a lie
right.
becomes its own, it has, the river tributaries.
Right.
It all of a sudden, and before you know it, it's not I heard, then they start giving you the direct thing. My whole thing with this is we know there was involvement with Trafficante. We know there was involvement. The only thing to me was the big question I always had, and I watched it live, the big question was, why did Ruby kill Oswald? That was my biggest question.
Oh, come on, you know the answer to that.
Well, they had to quiet him up, obviously.
They had to quiet him up, and he had debts, and he took care of his debts, and they wouldn't go after him. They got absolved for a lot of things. For your social media breaks, we heard it first. Out of the words of Bonanno, there was a picture of J. Edgar Hoover having sex with, what was that guy?
Clyde Tolson.
Clyde Tolson.
And that's what kept the heat off the mob. This is like history, Carlo. Because this journalist, first of all, if he tells me he heard it directly,
and I never heard that.
That's
ever.
gossipable. No, I did hear about him being a fruitcake.
Yeah, I heard that.
Not fruitcake, but they don't call that no more. Now it's acceptable. Gay, which there's nothing wrong with being gay, and I'm a very supportive gay. More men become gay, more women for us, right?
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah.
But that's funny because I've heard this story many times about J. Edgar Hoover dressing in women's garments.
But what I found fascinating is I always thought Lansky was a genius in terms of investing the mob money.
And it was all money that they never found.
Cuba, everybody remembers the Cuba with but it was a photograph. It wasn't that he was like a brilliant financier. He wasn't working for Goldman Sachs here or something.
They let off the mob. Something was blocking them from going after the mob. And it stands to reason. I mean, you don't have to be a first-grade detective. Duh, somebody's keeping them from. And Hoover, nobody wanted to go around because he was supposedly.
He had pictures of everybody else.
Yeah, but also my friend there, the great Martin Luther King, which I respect. I'm not down talker, but he had a little loose zipper problem. Like he was banging Tate and everything. Supposedly, Hoover had all this information on Martin Luther King. You've heard of that, right?
Of course.
Yeah. See, people are afraid to talk about these things. I'm not afraid to talk. Either it is or it isn't. And I'm not knocking Martin Luther King because he had a loose zipper. Hey, I'm a man too.
But I was at ABC for 15 years working on Primetime Live as senior producer. So I did a story on Martin Luther King's assassination. And we interviewed this guy, Sam Donaldson, if you remember him.
Yeah, sure.
So he interviewed this guy who ran the cafe across the street from the Little Rain
You remember
Motel.
Goodman over there? Or was ABC?
Roger Goodman.
Good friend of mine.
Oh, really?
Roger's
the best.
We did a pilot for the thing called The Runner.
Right.
It was prior to 9/11, whereas I was the chief detective and our teams going out would give them clues, and then this other guy from the CIA had The Runner, and he would hide from us. And they spent $10 million on it, and then after 9/11 happened, we were put on the board for the fall season on CBS. Actually on the board, The Runner. ABC. We went to that little party they have announcing the fall season.
Yeah.
And then the heads got together and said they don't want people running around right after 9/11. They were afraid because of the situation. And I did understood, but $10 million they invested in that.
Wow.
Roger Goodman was the producer, and Roger did the Academy Award, director, did Academy Awards, everything. Yeah.
Roger used to refer himself in third person. Roger wants you to do this. Roger wants you to do that.
Quite talented.
He's
guy.
incredibly smart. And talented guy.
Getting back to the story, because I want to hear the rest of it. So you did this.
So across the street from the Lorraine Motel was this little cafe run by this guy Lloyd Jowers, and Jowers said that after the shooting happened, he took the gun, not from James Earl Ray, and broke it down. It was a Memphis police officer, and he went on camera. He talked about this thing, and long story short, the King family believed him.
Right.
Ended up suing. And it became a civil judgment against Jowers. I think he paid $1 or $2, but they had actually finding a fact against a different person in the assassination of MLK. And I could talk forever about that thing. That thing was dirt. You remember the picture when they were all standing over the body and they're all pointing?
And the shakedown guy was there. Jesse Jackson.
Jesse was down there below, but he smeared himself with the blood. And then they're all pointing at the rooming house. And if you look at that picture again, there's somebody who has his hand on Martin Luther King's body. Okay, who's like this while they're all pointing. That guy was named Merrill McCullough, and I found him. You know where he was working? He was a CIA agent. CIA agent? He was working for the CIA.
Wow.
Turned out that he was the undercover officer for the police department who infiltrated the King group at the time. And then after that, he went to work for CIA.
Wow.
So,
these stories are, like anything, it just come out of left field. There's a story behind that story. And everyone accepts Lee Harvey Oswald as being this old lone gunman and all that. Nothing made sense through that whole investigation.
Well, Bo, you used to be a police officer. You're telling me the guy shoots the civil rights leader and then leaves the gun conveniently out there, and then he has access to travel all over the country and is given all this stuff, ends up in Canada. His lawyer at the time, I think it was Percy Foreman, who pled him out within 2 minutes. It was like, we'll take the plea, no problem, life imprisonment. And then Percy's debts suddenly get cleared up at the time. There was so many crazy stuff going on.
Well, this is the interesting part about journalists, too, about reporting. I mean, you're a detective. A journalist is as good as every detective I've ever worked with, because a journalist is a detective, Carlo. They got to find out the facts, the true facts, and it's really interesting stuff.
Without the power of the law behind them.
Now, there was one other part that we should talk about. It was this meeting with this Mossad. Everyone, they have this aura about them, about being the greatest of whatever they did, and they had the Antibes and right on Antibes and all that kind of stuff. And this is certainly a group of people through the years from the beginning that was recognized as the best. I'd love you to talk a bit about the Mossad.
Oh yeah, so I did a story about this guy Ashraf Marwan, who Israel claims was their greatest spy. Turned out he actually might have been a double agent working for the Egyptians. And what happened was in the 1973 war, Sadat wanted to attack Israel, but he needed to cross the Suez Canal. So the Israelis, you've seen Game of Thrones, I assume, the Israelis created a Game of Thrones scenario at the Suez Canal. So if the Egyptians would attack, they engulfed the whole thing in flames. The tanks would come. It'd be a slaughter. They expected 25,000 Egyptian troops to die, basically the entire army. So this guy Marwan kept feeding the Israelis all this information over a couple of years. And then when it came time to D-Day, he said the attack's going to happen at sundown. attack happened at noon. So it was like a 3 or 4 hour difference, but that was enough to allow the Egyptian army to cross the Suez. And instead of 25,000 dying, they lost, I think, 140 soldiers. They captured the Israeli thing. They pushed inside, and they basically sued for peace at that point. It was the biggest defeat the Israelis ever had. And so, but the Israelis, with their pride, maintain that this guy was the legitimate deal. So what if he was off by 4 hours? No big deal.
No big deal.
But that was the difference between winning and losing the war. So I went to Israel, and we did the story, and I got to know some of these Mossad characters, and they obviously wanted to influence me, so they kept coming out of the woodwork one after another. So they said, you have to meet this guy Shmuel. Shmuel was in charge of European operations for the Mossad for 20 years. He was the guy who was the hottest guy, biggest guy in the Mossad. And I expected, James Bond 007. I didn't know what the hell to expect. So they told me to go to a park bench in Ramat Gan, which is a suburb outside Tel Aviv. I'm sitting there.
This is cool shit, huh?
This old Jewish guy with like shorts.
Like a schleppy guy?
Schleppy guy. Yeah, they would kick him off the golf course if he wore those, the cargo pants shorts.
With what, black socks probably?
Yeah, no, miscolored socks. Kind of a T-shirt. And he looked kind of like a little short Meyer Lansky type. So he says, so I understand you've been looking for me? Just like that. And I said, you're Shmuel?
You're a hero.
And he said, what were you expecting? And then we went off to a little picnic bench, and we talked for 3.5 hours. And he was the single most interesting guy I've ever met in my life.
Really?
And it turned out that, in the spy business, you were a police officer, you know what kind of trading information's all about. So he used to sit down with like the Russian guy and the Egyptian guys, and they used to like help each other out.
Give you some,
we
you
both
give me
like
some.
being in Paris, right? It's nice. Yeah, I'll give you something. You give me something.
Yeah.
That way you keep, you stay in Paris. So there was a reason the guy was able to stay in Paris for 20 years.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You're going to meet some big, badass guy with sunglasses, tough guy, muscles with a 9mm in his back.
Exactly.
And you meet Shlomo.
Yeah.
But it's funny how, expectation is subverted because you think these guys are going to be enemies, and they probably have more in common than they have different. So that, of course,
I know. What's his name? What was his name? Barak, the little guy from the used to be prime minister, Barak. What was his name?
Ehud Barak.
Ehud Barak. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah,
he's a little small guy.
Small guy general. Tough guy general.
Yeah. Cool guy. I've had dinner with him. I used to hang around with Abe Foxman too. The civil liberty. Was ACL? No, Abe Foxman. What do you had up?
ADL.
ADL, the anti-Jewish.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mike Wallace and I sat with Ariel Sharon. And he had just written a book, and I was like anxious. I wanted to do this profile, I wanted to do the story. So Mike and I are there, and Sharon starts talking. Couldn't understand a word he said. It was what did he say? What did he say? And Mike at one point gives me a look like, you wasted my time by having me sit with this guy. And then he leans over and whispers to me, says, you better hope he doesn't agree to do this piece, otherwise it's going to be your ass. And thankfully he decided not to do it.
Well, I think the big one that I really look upon you is because in New York City and Long Island and around the state and all over the country, our biggest real thing affecting us is not car accidents and it's not murders on the street. It's the death with opioids, which we're facing how many a year approximately?
73,000.
That's more than the war in Vietnam.
Right.
And this is every year. And your expose on it by finding out that we had a United States congressman who's effectively left the Congress, used his position in lobbying for these massive drug companies. And I was so happy to see that doctor the other day, that Schmeckel there, 80-year-old doctor they locked up for putting scripts out. What was that one? That doctor, the old Jewish guy. He was 80 years old. They locked him up. They gave him 20 years. He's 80. Yeah. That means he's going away to jail. And that should be an example to everyone. You're killing not just kids on the street. Middle-aged people have back problems. They become addicted to it. It's a horrific thing. Then they go from the opioids to the heroin. What your expose brought out was the conflict utilizing lobbying for these scumbag drug companies to continue to make money.
So we set out to find out who's responsible for the opiate crisis. It couldn't just be a bunch of 80-year-old doctors, but it had to be corporations. So the first story we did was about how the DEA was hamstrung at the height of the opiate crisis and couldn't do the law enforcement that they wanted to do because Congress tied them up in knots. And the Justice Department tied him up in knots. And the one Bo refers to is this Congressman Marino, who created a legislation.
Pennsylvania, right?
And by the way, so he was going to be, after he pushed through legislation that basically prevented the enforcement efforts against all of the opiate companies, Trump was going to appoint him to be drug czar. Now, Trump, thank God, President Trump, watches our broadcast. And the next day, he says, yeah, we're going to have to sort of see about Marino. And I got a text from Steve Bannon, who I had a relationship with back then, and he said the guy, once when he says you have to see about the guy, he says the guy's toast. Give him 24 hours. And 24 hours later, he decides Marino pulls himself out of being considered
unbelievable.
For,
it was a great
czar.
expose, and you know, it's just funny. Like you said, the president watches 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
He regards it as the way I regard it, like the holy grail of news. 60 Minutes is 60 Minutes. I was just with the president 2 weeks ago down on the golf course down in Palm Beach. One of the reasons why I went down there, I ran into. I'm doing business with this company called Cohen Resnick, where it's a forensic accounting company, but now with the advent of, they're talking about it may really hit, and we needed $2 trillion in new infrastructure across the country.
Oh, yeah.
Which to me is we need it. It's not Democrats, not Republicans, bipartisan. But the problem with these things, if you're going to build a tunnel for $1 billion, they come in there, they bid for it, but yet they know that they cannot complete it. Then that $1 billion becomes $1.6 billion, $7 billion, and once it's like getting someone pregnant, you can't get it out.
No,
so
exactly
my point is Cohen Resnick, and that's what I talked to the president's chief of staff, and I'm going to continue talking about it because this, to me, I want to get involved with this for the fact that these are forensic accounting. Say if you're going to order 50,000 yards of concrete, they know, they look at forensically how much it's going to cost. So on a project, say $500 million project, you could spend $50 million on a consulting construction company that will make sure that project comes in. So if we're going to put $2 trillion out, we don't want that $2 trillion to turn into $3 trillion. We want, and I think that's very.
Bo, you're so. I hate to give you this compliment, but you're so smart about this. When I was at ABC,
that's why I went to Washington. That's why I went to talk to the president.
No,
I said
smart.
I want to be involved.
So let me tell you something. When I was at ABC, I used to do all the hidden camera investigations, put hidden cameras in VA hospitals and boarding care homes and all this stuff. I always wanted to do the hidden camera at a road site because you ever see these guys? They're on coffee breaks 7-8 hours a day.
I was a construction worker.
No. So they've been, I live in Westchester. They've been building the same road now for 5, 6, 7 years.
It's unbelievable.
And the grandkids are not even going to see this road completed. And we're not talking about a long stretch of highway. And give Donald Trump his due. When he went and fixed Woolman Rink, I mean, they were cocking around on that rink forever, and then he comes there and he goes there every single day. He went every day, and supervised the site.
I don't
care if you like the guy or not.
I don't want to get political.
No,
he knows how to build.
He knows how to
cut. What he did with Boeing about the Air Force One, they would charge extra. He goes, no. I mean, no one wants to listen to him. They hate him. We can't even have a discussion in New York City, a civilized discussion with people. Oh, F Trump. No, how about let's get together and get stuff done. This infrastructure thing is a very important thing to me. Also, I spoke to his chief of staff. The other one is we've had over 6,500 people murdered in Chicago in the last 10 years through the great Obama presidency. His hometown, no one effectively did anything. I said, Mr. President, I'll come out of the woodwork as a special assistant. I want to be able to go with you to Chicago, utilize the federal RICO law with 3 or more involved in an criminal enterprise, guns, robberies, drug dealing, or stolen property, and we start putting undercovers, and we start locking these gangs up. They have a law in Chicago. If you have a loaded gun, you get 1 year. No, it'll become a federal law. You'll be open if you're a predicate for 15 years. We've got to care about the people in our inner cities, and I think if this president steps up and does it in Chicago and says, I care about little Letitia shot on the stoop, 7 years old, shot in the head with a bullet. I care about that the same as I care about anywhere in this country. He's got to relate to the African-American population, because everyone who's African-American don't just pull Democrat. They are working out with businesses, jobs. They're becoming successful. They're part of, I saw Ken Langone today, part of capitalism and free enterprise. Work hard equals success. And that's something that the communities in Chicago who have been besieged with these murders, no one's done anything. And I called upon the president. This is a great opportunity.
What did he say to you?
Well, I talked to his chief of staff, and I'm keep right. I had Bill Shine was involved with me.
Right.
So I really, these are issues. Look, I'm an American. I don't want to make money on it. What I want to do is I want to be and help bring this country together.
Getting back to the infrastructure issue, here you have in New York, you have Robert Caro, who who did this extraordinary book about Moses.
Right.
And Moses built Jones Beach, built all the bridges. Robert Moses.
Before you were born, Carlo. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's a classic book. Yeah, the book is a classic book. Everybody should be required to look at that book. How this man, when the technology wasn't like it is in 2019, how he was able to accomplish all this, build everything.
And he was never even elected.
And that was just in New York.
Because he was a man.
Was just in New York.
He was a man who understood and got things done. Right. But you could take this same initiative, and one of the reasons why they hate Donald Trump is it ain't business like usual. It ain't the lobbyists, the 1,000+ lobbyists that are lobbying for these construction companies or who are lobbying for certain things, the contracts with the Defense Department. There's a lot of waste in this government and a lot of waste, and they don't like Trump because he wants to try to minimize the waste.
Let me tell you, again, I don't want to get political, but give the man his due. When I live up in Westchester, and he bought the club up there, Trump National in Westchester. So the first hole was a very little short par 4, 275 yards.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to sort of make it bigger and all this stuff. So what Trump did, one day he came out there and he says, let's buy the house across the way. And they're all looking at him like he's crazy. He said, you want to buy the house all the way to, yeah, let's buy that house. There's a carrot. We'll have the, your first shot. I'm probably played up there. It's the 10th hole. The 10th hole. So, and then you have to hit over this ravine.
Yeah, many times.
So he bought the house. He kicked the guy out of his house. He gave him a deal he couldn't refuse. And he created a classic par 4 out of a garbage hole. And that was
kind of similar to Bel Air with over the top on the 10th hole, right?
Yeah, exactly.
LA, exactly.
Yeah. And they just bought. He bought.
If you don't make it, son, you're not a golfer. You don't understand. If you don't have a 200 carry, it goes into the.
Yeah. And so he had the vision to do that. And again, I'm not getting into his politics and the presidency, but he is an extraordinary builder. And for him, forget about the wall and he should. I think you're exactly right. He should take on infrastructure. Infrastructure is a great
it could be one of our greatest. Well, we have. I'd like you to do me again, and we could talk about some other stuff.
We got to 2 questions.
But you want to know something? Well, I do have the guy who feeds me.
Yeah. One
of my people that I do business for, that I make money on. I can't make him wait for lunch.
No.
But I really want to thank you, Ira, and I would love to have you back. And you know what? We could talk about.
Come back.
And, we were talking about some issues that I brought to you with the advent of my bowler wrap and about non-lethal equipment for police departments. We can talk about a lot of things. And you know what's a great thing? Our podcast. And it's getting pretty big out there. And we put out the social media. People listen because it's not doing a 60 minutes interview. It's taking off the gloves and showing the dirt under his nails, under your nails, and showing the real grit of a story, which we kind of touched upon. But I'd love you to come back and do this again.
Before I got into opiates, I was.
You want to come out to Vegas with me with Scaramucci? I'm going out Monday, and we can play golf out there with the hedge fund conference.
We'll go off air. We'll talk.
Yeah.
But but there was
we play golf. It's more important.
But I did the broken Congress, broken Senate. I did 4, 5, 6 stories about this, about insider trading, how they were self-dealing to themselves.
Well, you remember my friend Jordan Belfort, that little creep?
Remember that?
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you, Ira,
All right.
and we'd love to have you back again.
All right.
And go ahead, Carlo.
All right.
Take
So
off.
Before we end, we do every week Punk of the Week, something that we do here, something that's bothering you, an issue, a person, something that you want to call out.
Anything. Could be an issue, could be a person, could be anything.
The Giants general manager, I'm sorry, I'm a New Yorker, New York Giants general manager, he takes this quarterback at the 6th spot when he had the next, Michael Strahan available to him. And next year they have 3 or 4 quarterbacks that are much better than anything they're going to have this year. And he could have waited. He could have gotten their quarterback next year. Instead, he picks up this guy, and it was a completed wasted pick. And this is just from a Giants perspective. So for me, he's the guy who you say is what, punk of the week?
Punk of the week.
Yeah, he's the punk of the week.
What's yours, Carlo?
I would have to agree. I think Daniel Jones
Carlo,
is a bad
you got to
pick.
think of your own
Bad pick.
punk.
Bad pick.
All right, now
New York sports in general were kind of...
It's sad.
My punk of the week, he keeps popping up. I picked the paper up today. It's still pay for play with all these lobbyists in New York City. You want to get something built? Meet up with one of the lobbyists. My friend Sid Davidoff, Shakedown Man, he's around every mayor because this is New York City, the corrupt capital of the world. And Big Bird is my punk of the week. And I'm glad he took a picture with the real Big Bird because I named him Big Bird. That's my punk of the week, like always.
All right. So there you have it. Thank you very much to Ira Rosen for being here today. Really blew our minds with some of these facts. Stay tuned. Always follow us on Twitter. We're at One Tough Podcast. Bo's at Bo Dietl on Twitter. And we'll see you next time.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.